But good news. I have good news for you, Chandler.
There's an alternative.
There is an alternative.
If you don't like this world,
that will fix all of your problems. Literally every single one of them.
Maybe I am into it. Yeah.
See?
Maybe I am into it. Where am I going?
Prepare yourself. I just need you to put this headset on here.
Oh, man.
Enter the Metaverse.
Yep.
So,
you put me onto this a couple weeks ago when this was just bubbling under the surface. Everyone saw the news of like, oh, Facebook has changed their name to Meta. You know, what's that weirdo up to?
exactly. So, the Metaverse has been around for a while, actually quite a while. It's becoming a lot more real and relevant in kind of today's day and age. And I think the thing that kind of turned the page for the average person, including kind of myself, was Facebook changing its name to Meta. And then
Yeah, that's what got everyone's attention.
and it got everyone's attention. So, first off, do you know what the Metaverse is?
I do, but I mean, my first thing, my lay thing is like, oh, you mean like virtual reality?
Effectively.
Yeah, but you know this stuff better than I do. So I'm this is where I show my age, man. This just makes me all angry. So you just go ahead.
So the Metaverse is kind of like, for lack of a better term, I'll call it like Internet 3.0 in some sense. So Internet 1.0 was when they first got it, like, and it became mainstream. It was
The old
basically
dial-up.
yeah, exactly, dial-up, text on a screen. You pretty much just kind of consumed from it. Internet 2.0 is when you got to this point of kind of interacting with it. So the things we have now, where there's video, audio, we can input and people can take stuff from it as well.
Yep.
This is kind of going to 3.0 in some sense, and it's a hybrid of some other items as well. But for lack of a better term, it gets to a point where it's almost immersive. And I think the best example that most people can kind of see is Grand Theft Auto. Grand Theft Auto is like you're entering into another world, or Fortnite. You're entering into another world to act again as a character in that world and do things.
And those worlds aren't as static as they once were. Like the first-person shooter or whatever they're called. I'm not a big gamer guy, so I'm going to show my ignorance here. But when I was young, it was like, all right, GoldenEye was the thing, and then it was Halo, and then I guess like Call of Duty and all this stuff. It's like, okay, you're a guy in this world, and then over time, it's like, oh man, like you could play with 3 other friends if you each had a controller and plugged them in and were in the same room.
Yeah.
And then it evolved to like online, and now it's kind of that to the nth degree. But those were still like in static spaces, right? Like they were pre-designed by the company, and like you couldn't change the world in there, but that's what's also kind of changing.
Exactly. And so even now, like you use your phone, so you can work off of your phone. This is effectively now literally taking you into that world through a VR headset, potential suits, and the whole works where you get some tactile feedback. It probably will start with gloves. They'll give you tactile feedback from touching things. That'll eventually morph into, I believe, full suits. Chandler's having a little freak out right now.
No.
I think it's very cool. I think it makes a lot of sense. It's been so infancy, like it's been just not at a level that people expect to be able to consume it on the average day-to-day level, but it's out, which is good, so it's getting a lot of playtime. Anyways, I've been fairly excited about this because I think it's going to change things. I mean, Mark Zuckerberg is saying 5 to 10 years. I think the realistic timeline is more like 20 years. But I also have some concern that it's going to impact our day-to-day. And I was even saying this to Chandler before we came on, I have some concern that it'll impact how the real estate values, like the real estate in today's world, because you're seeing now people investing in real estate in the metaverse, as well as if people are in the metaverse and are able to spend so much time there, there might be less interest in what we have to offer in the real world.
Well, the obvious example is, I mean, you won't care where you live. Like if you're as a developer, you start putting your hat like, well, I'm just going to do all these like tiny 300 square foot bachelors or 1 bedrooms because the person's just going to be sitting there with this headset on, imagining they're in a penthouse and living like a way better life than their sad existence in the real world.
Yeah.
So like, is that going to change how people develop living spaces? Like just put people in these tiny little shoe boxes if they're just going to be in their fantasy world where everything goes their way.
You don't need a lot of space if you can go to this world. So the thing that's kind of captured my attention, I mean, obviously we're real estate based, is people are spending millions on land within the metaverse. To be clear, by the way, the metaverse, again, it's like, I'm going to use it for lay terms, it's like the internet. So you're not buying land directly in the metaverse, you're buying it within, let's say, a platform or a world within the metaverse. So like currently right now, there's the internet, you own a domain name, which is like your landing page. There's the metaverse, you can then create basically a domain or a world within that, and then you can own that space. Yeah. The average person wouldn't necessarily create a world, but they could maybe join into a company that hosts a world and purchase space within that that world. And I think right now the one that most people might know or have heard of potentially on the news is Decentraland. That would be, I think, the most commonly used one. They have their own crypto. I think they're traded. The crypto's traded at
Mana.
Mana's traded, and it's basically a world with 90,000 purchasable, saleable blocks of land.
Is that finite?
Yes.
Okay. Because this is the cool thing about crypto. You and I talk a weird amount about inflation, it seems. But one of the things that I've always found really interesting about crypto is that how many of the currencies are deflationary, right? Like XRP has a burn, a transaction burn, which steadily decreases the amount of available XRP. And even Bitcoin, it's a finite amount that can ever be mined, and a lot of it gets lost kind of organically. So you've got this fall away so that it
automatically puts an upward pressure on it.
Yeah, resists inflationary pressure. And my concern with the Metaverse, I have tons of concerns about the Metaverse, but my concern about buying something in the Metaverse would be, well, how is it a finite space? Because real estate values are based on being finite. And, it's ironic to me that they create like limitless possibilities, but also we're going to have finite real estate, so not everyone can afford it.
Well, Chandler, let me answer this good question that you've come up with. So, for example, Decentraland started and was created with 90,000 blocks, which are for sale, and they do trade depending on your location, because it is basically a square map, and the center of the map has I forget kind of where you land and enter into the game. Well, actually, we're going to bring it up here in a second, and then the value kind of radiates out from there. How it's considered finite is all 90,000 blocks. Let's say it was owned all separately by people. You all have voting rights based on how much land you own. So it's called a DAO, is it? DAO, a decentralized autonomous organization. And it's made up of all the people who own the land within Decentraland, and you guys vote on things. So if, let's say, the creators, or not even necessarily the creators, but someone proposed, hey, let's add 10,000 more units, there would have to be a majority vote that agrees to add more units of land. And so everything is done on a community-based system. So you shouldn't overnight just expect to be like, oh, now there's 10 million pieces of land and mine's worthless, right? So that's how it's controlled.
So are you able to access the game currently, even if you don't own land there? You can just pop in there and
you
just
can
walk
pop in
around
at any time. Tanner, you want to pop it up? Is it going to break everything? We have it here. You can pop in as a guest. And so, so you purchase it, and the land is attributed by the use of NFTs, which is another big topic. But NFTs are non-fungible tokens. And basically what they're doing is the NFT is how they assign this is the part that confused me a little bit, to be honest with you. But NFTs is they assign that piece of land. It's saying like, this is the piece of land based on this code or whatever, this set of numbers. That is then assigned within the blockchain, and it's never lost because it's literally like, this is the piece, and the blockchain tracks all of them. So when you trade the pieces, there's no replicating it because that exact piece of land is there and registered, and you can't re-register that exact same piece on top. And the blockchain is monitored basically by all of the systems on it. And so that's how it's traded back and forth.
Let's just to back up a little bit, because other people I'm more naive with this stuff because maybe I'm a bit older, and I also never gamed. Like, I do not like video games. So it's the natural extension of, okay, you're playing these video games online and you're existing in these worlds, and maybe you're just there to like shoot zombies or whatever, but you can talk to your friends online. Yep. And you could conceivably like go up and interact with them online, and then you can interact with people who are outside of your community group, but they're also online. Well, if that's the case, then why couldn't our characters, our avatars, live in this space? Why couldn't they go there and buy something unique? Not something that's a game piece within it, but something that another private person could create a store in here and sell costumes for our avatars and all of these things. So that is how the world expands beyond, here's the game narrative of we're here to shoot bad guys, to an actual coexistence that is malleable and that is changeable and that you can influence by your playing in it, i.e. much like the world itself, only you can make your avatar have a six-pack and you can live in a penthouse and all these things. And I love that like capitalism and commerce and real estate are just getting right in there, because at some point they're going to be arguing for rent control in the metaverse, but that's another thing altogether.
So to put that in perspective, 100%. Well, here's a prime example. So if you own a parcel of land, you could purchase from a designer who has built a billboard. And you could have a billboard set up on your land, and then you can rent out that billboard space to companies to advertise on your land with real money. So they would purchase mana, and you could charge mana or ETH or whatever you want, Bitcoin. You say, hey, I want this much Bitcoin for you to put up an ad on my piece of land within Decentraland. And it's already taking place. And on the same concept, you're seeing people set up, let's say, galleries for online artwork, and they can set it up there. And what that does is, on top of charging, let's say, an entrance fee to get into the gallery or a fee to trade the art within your gallery that you've designed and built or purchased from someone to design, you can then, the property value might increase because now you're having a certain amount of traffic to your parcel of land, so the land around you will start to increase in value. And so you're seeing that. And on top of that, same with products. Like you said, Nike has gone out and created digital products and is continuing to create more to sell within it.
Well, if you sort of think of like everyone now, even parents older than me, are loosely familiar with Fortnite.
Yeah.
One, the kids are addicted to it, and they understand that there's this thing that exists in Fortnite beyond the gameplay itself, but even just something as silly as dances. Right. And I don't know if you remember, but there were a couple lawsuits about dancers, choreographers who said, no, like I came up with that dance and then you used it in this alternative world and are getting value from it. I should be compensated for that.
Yeah.
And this is the way, creativity and copyright and intellectual property and stuff can exist in a world that's all fictional, but as soon as that's the case, as soon as it has value in this world that's increasingly being populated by people, by way of their avatars, it gains value. And I was very naive as to how many people actually do this. It always blew my mind, like how many of these guys just played these games nonstop. Like your buddies all play these games a lot.
I think everyone plays these games. I think in general, these games have hundreds of millions of active users, Fortnite being a prime example, at all age groups, to be honest.
Yeah. And how much is it social now, do you think?
It's a big part of being social because it's much easier now to be social, especially like it all started with the internet. It allowed us to maintain contact with people. So once you graduate, let's say high school or university, a lot of people tend to move all over the world. We've been able to maintain that contact. Sometimes you lose your best friend because they had to get employed in a different part of the world or they have an interest in being in a different part of the world. These, like the internet's allowed us to maintain contact, and now video games allow you to maintain contact and an activity that you can share. And the metaverse is increasing that. So now you can not only do activities that are just video games, you might be able to go in and do like shopping.
And COVID sort of pushed this to the forefront too, because people who had never, even knew what Zoom was, all of a sudden like Zoom is now part of our common day life, right? Like this idea of interacting virtually with people that you hadn't seen, and all of a sudden, I mean, I did this in COVID, we were like playing a game.
Yeah.
Like, so all of us would be logged in from different parts of the country playing the same game.
Yep.
And then so it's a natural evolution to go from there to like, well, what if this game exists in a room and this room exists in a building and this building exists in a city, and you just build it out from there.
You had the layers.
Yeah.
Do you want me to blow your mind?
Blow my mind, Neal.
Piece of land just sold in Decentraland.
Oh, man, I did hear about this. Yeah.
$2.43 million.
And these aren't imaginary bucks. These are real. This is real money.
This
part's very real.
USDs.
Yeah. Well, actually, it was mana.
Yeah. Sorry. It was traded mana, but to boil it back to dollars, and it was actually a real estate firm.
So think about that. That is far higher than, and I think it was commercial real estate, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. So someone bought a piece of commercial real estate in Decentraland, presumably on a great location.
Yes.
Real good exposure, great walk-by traffic, for $2.4 million.
Yeah.
When I was broke, I had rich habits.